The Mayo Experience.
Mayo Experience. Mayo Experience. Mayo Experience. Experience.
Welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience, presented by DraftKings. First look, US Open, picks, the research. We already have the odds available to us, so we don't need to guess them. However, there's always some sort of reset on Sunday, Monday morning. Once we figure out the guys that no one is betting on, then they fall down the market, and vice versa, especially what happens towards the end of the Canadian Open. If one of the bigger names wins, all of a sudden they vault up the board, and if they flame out on Friday, then all of a sudden you're probably going to end up getting a better number at the year's third major. Reminder to everyone out there right now, help us out. Smash the like, sub to the channel, and in the comment section, give me your favorite back-end player. Who can we fill out our DraftKings teams with this week? I mean, you can tell me Xander's going to be great. Scotty's going to be great. Rom's going to be great. I understand that they're probably going to be great. That I don't need the help with. The help I need is who from the bottom end can we reasonably rely on here this week and have a modicum of faith in. I am giving away $500, cold, hard cash, to one of you out there. It's going to be $500 for one. We're not going to break it up into $250, $200, and whatever the hell the rest of it is. I guess $50. No. $500. Maybe there'll be more added later on in the week, plus a fantasynational.com free annual subscription to someone out there who is already a member. So the ways to do that, the two big ones is rate, review, and subscribe to the Pat Mayo Experience audio podcast on Apple or Spotify. If you can't leave a review on Spotify, just screenshot me the 5 stars and boom, we are good to go. On Apple, make something up, leave something nice, include your Twitter handle or email, and boom, you are in that draw. Tambo and I will be giving away the winner on on Wednesday, when we do the DraftKings show, the ownership, and all of the final bets for the week, including the one and done. Because we got a lot of time in between now and when tee-off actually happens to change our minds on things. Maybe we'll see something different that we didn't see in today's show. I have a very special guest who's played LA Country Club, over 10 times and averages a lot off the tee. So we had some great insight to not only how this is going to play for the pros, but how this course has changed over time since the last time that we saw it in a major competition in 2017 at the Walker Cup, which we'll look at here in a second. The other way to really get a lot of ballots into the draw, there's 15 for the review and there's 8 for subbing to the Mayo Media newsletter that is free to join down in the description right now. Also down in the description, the PME DraftKings Listeners League, rake free over $100K in guaranteed money. It's already like 30% full, so you might want to go reserve your spots right now to ensure that you're playing in the best tournament on DraftKings. You might say, hey Pat, I can put in $100 and try to win $1 million. That's great and everything. You're not going to win. You might win the PME Open, and even if you don't, there's flat payouts. It's not like you lose $900,000 on a putt and lose by half a point, something like that. No. In the Pat Mayo Experience Open, you finish inside like the top 20, you are getting a very good payout on your $15 investment. So go get your spots right now. All right, so here's a little bit of info about the US Open. Obviously, it's the year's third major. It is America's National Open. 156 players in the field, only top 60 in ties make the cut. That is very important to know because the 6 of 6 percentage on DraftKings is going to be very low. It is every single year at the US Open. So if you can, let's say you play 20 lineups and you get 5 through of 6 of 6, you are triple the field, most likely at that point. I'm predicting somewhere between a 4 and 7% 6 of 6 because one of these big names is going to flame out. At least one of them. It's probably going to be multiple because that's what happens, especially with a course that most people have not seen in the past. It's the first time in a major competition as a major for the professional players. It's the first time that we're going to see it. So we don't even really know how the USGA is going to rig this up in terms of the rough and everything that we can expect. So the player is going to be somewhat taken off guard. Of course, they're going to get their practice rounds in, but we just see it at the US Open every year. It's a hard course. And no matter how great a player is, one bad day at a US Open, absolute toast. So you have to dodge the landmines this week on DraftKings, but you just have to know going in that, a 5 to 6 lineup is probably going to cash as long as you have the winner and a few people inside the top 20. That's still going to be good enough to at least make a little bit of money. You're going to need the 6 of 6 if you're going to win, obviously. But it's going to be very difficult this week. So don't beat yourself up if one of your high-end picks ends up absolutely just torching some of your good-looking lineups. It happens it happens every week, but it's more pronounced this week. The other thing to talk about right now is the Colin Morikawa injury. It does appear like he is going to give it a go. So we'll see. We'll see how that dramatically affects his ownership. And we'll get more information on that Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday to see how healthy he actually is. He was dealing with back spasms, forced him to pull out of the Memorial. I mean, I've suffered from back spasms for probably about 20 years right now, and they tend to go away within like 4 days. Probably less with good medication and good treatment, which I assume that Colin Morikawa has. However, it's a situation where if it's like a debilitating back problem, yeah, then it's going to be an issue. But if it literally was just spasms, and he said it was the first time he had ever had it in his life, then he probably should be fine. And, Morikawa in LA, a California course, I mean, that's really where we like to use Colin Morikawa. So maybe we can get a discount on him. We'll see. I don't want to do anything as it pertains to him until we have at least a glimmer of information about whether he's healthy or whether he's not healthy. If you missed it, PGA Tour and LIV in the DP World Tour are in an agreement to merge. It's not official yet. Tim, Jeff, and I did an emergency show. You can go check that out on the feed right now or up on the YouTube channel. It was a lot of fun. I did it on site as I was traveling for 2 days. So just trying to react in real time to all of that information was a lot. Some of my opinions have changed from that now that I have a little bit more information about how the structure is going to work and how the board is going to be set up, yet where the money is still going to be coming from. Might cause some problems down the road, but this might not even go through. It could be an antitrust violation. So hopefully we have a bit more information on that. Maybe we'll touch on it in 2 weeks, or maybe even after LACC on Thursday. Maybe I'll have a show up trying to talk to someone a bit more in the know than me, trying to react to Twitter and Tim, who's just like, LIV is great. It's not great. So that's where we're at right now. Let's jump over for a moment. I wanted to let you know that fantasynational.com, you get 20% off this week. fantasynational.com/Mayo. And again, if you want to do all those things that I talked about, the giveaways for the Apple and Spotify reviews, subbing to this YouTube channel, subbing to the newsletter, retweeting any tweet that you see about the US Open, will give you access to get in the draw for the Fantasy National annual membership for free, along with the $500. There'll be 2 separate winners to that. The only difference is you need to be an existing member at fantasynational.com in order to win the free annual membership. So no better time to get in than right now. You get it the weekly. It's with the 20% discounts, $8 if you're going to be betting head-to-heads, filling out DraftKings lineups, betting outrights. This is what you're going to want to be at on fantasynational.com/Mayo. The other thing I wanted to look at very briefly is the 2017 Walker Cup, because there are some players in the field. The course has changed, and our guest in a moment will tell you how it has changed a little bit over that time as he starts to break down some of the holes. But the best player in this? Colin Morikawa. I believe he was 4-0 going through it. Scotty Scheffler played in this tournament. He was 1-1-1. The Gim Reaper, Cameron Champ, Mav McNeely, all as a part of Team USA that year. Will Zalatoris, but obviously he is not playing due to injury. Oh, Panda. Panda was on the team as an 18-year-old as well. From the European side, the only one I believe that is in the field this week is going to be Robert McIntyre, who actually, I believe he beat up on Scheffler a few times. He beat Cameron Champ in singles 6-4. Yikes. Watch out there, Cameron Champ. And the other one, he halved with Cameron Champ in the afternoon singles. Where was Scheffler? Scheffler beat Connor Seam. Maybe it was the opening singles then. Now I don't even know where it went. It's crazy to me that Scheffler was not regarded in any sort of way that he didn't play in the first round of afternoon singles in 2017. How it has changed. All right, let's bring him in. I told you I had someone that I was going to use as a resource for this, someone who's played the course. And in fact, I met Greg Less at the DFS Open a week before the world shut down for the pandemic. Greg, I think you thought you were playing with Wiley, and instead you ended up playing with Feinberg and myself.
Yeah, we had a late sub out with Wiley. I was looking forward to playing with my friend Wiley, but playing with you and Jeff was a good time. We played pretty well. But eventually we didn't end up winning. I wasn't expecting to, but still fun.
Yeah, listen, I'm a lot better now than I was then. I'd almost like to run it back to see if we could do better.
Same. I've been practicing a lot. I mean, COVID was my my big golf renaissance. I improved the game a lot. We're ready for the next DFS Open to usher the next pandemic into the world.
Well, I mean, one of the main reasons that I wanted to ask you about this, not only have you played the course a bunch of times and you're just super into golf anyway, and from a betting and DraftKings perspective, you completely understand that as well. But when it came to the Canadian Open, and I was going to ask Jeff all about the course and the rerunning, I was like, what is Jeff really going to know about this? He's like, I asked him, like, is the rough long? He's like, it's long for me. I was like, well, that's not really helping me whatsoever. But you have actually played LA Country Club from the tips. You kind of understand what the differences are between when the Walker Cup was here and when the differences that are going to be made with the USGA coming in. So can you tell people just the very quick version of what they should be expecting from LA Country Club versus something even like Riviera or Torrey Pines or one of the other California courses?
Yeah, I've been fortunate to play the course about 10 times in my life. Most recently, last November, I played it twice from the US Open tees. And one of the rounds, I was fortunate enough to play with a Corn Ferry Tour player who hits it a long way. So I was able to see exactly how a pro might be able to play this course. While it is in Southern California, it is a lot different than a Torrey or a Riviera. It is a really big course, big ballpark. You can just send driver everywhere. The grass is very different. There's no Kikuya, no POA on the course. It's all Bermuda rough, Bermuda fairways with bent grass greens. And it's got a lot of hills and a lot of runoffs. So it's a big kind of sweeping property. I compare it more to maybe an Augusta. Shinnecock is probably my closest comparison. And then I also thought of Memorial Park is another one that I throw in there, and a little bit of Southern Hills. So it's not similar to most California courses, although you are right in the middle of Los Angeles. There's a big difference in the playability to either a Torrey or a Riviera.
So the answer to the question is Rory.
Rory, for sure. I mean, one of the good parts about this place is you can send driver everywhere. And the one difference from the Walker Cup, if anyone goes back and watches, they took in a number of fairway lines on probably about 5 or 6 holes. Although I did see in one of the great videos they have on the flyovers on the YouTube that on 18, they really took the fairway in a few months ago, but I ended up taking it back out to make it wider. But there is room all over the place to hit it. So if you are on with a driver, you can really take advantage of this place, and you can hit driver almost every par 4 and 5 if you want to. So it's definitely a driver heavy course. It's long, 7,400 par 70 with lots of long par 4s. So definitely a guy who's really going to be strong off the tee, I think, is going to help here.
So, and you said that even like when you kind of charted it out, where you would see like the, at least plurality, probably majority of some of the approach shots coming in, like everything is from beyond 175 yards, it looks like.
Yeah, a lot of long irons. I kind of did my approach buckets to kind of figure it out. There's 3 par 5s. The first opening hole is basically a par 4.5. It plays downhill, downwind, and you can just send driver there and often have a 5-6 iron coming in. Few par 4s that are tricky with a little bit with some wedges, but mainly I had 7 shots between 175 and 225 that you'd have in those different approach buckets. A lot of long irons and a lot of precision. One thing about this course, it's got really big greens in comparison to a Riviera. Really big greens with a lot of small kind of cutouts or fingers. So, I mean, precise iron play, long iron play is going to be super important here. Being able to fit approach shots into those different sections of the green. These greens are really difficult. They can get it. I'm sure they will get it really firm and fast at this place. They've been talking about having the US Open at LA for decades, and apparently the membership finally relented about 5 to 10 years ago. So I think they're going to want to not embarrass the membership by having a super low score here. On a day-to-day basis, this course doesn't play that difficult for a really high-level pro. When I played with that Corn Ferry Tour player, he shot 66, 4 under. So I think they will get the place going super firm and fast. So maybe that some of those 175 to 200 shots that usually come in may go to 150 to 75, but I think that kind of 7-6-5 iron is where a lot of guys will be living most of the way. Some of these par 4s are just so long, 500 yards plus. The finishing 16, 17, 18 are just long, brutal par 4s. And there's no faking it. You got to have your tee to green game wired coming into here.
I got to ask about some of these distances on the holes and try to get you to make sense of it for me. So there is a par 3 that's 124 yards. That's number 15. Is that like reminiscent of that like shorty at Pebble, or is it just like a weird hole?
Pebble, I guess that's actually kind of a close comparison on 7, although it's flat. The green is super tricky, and then it's just surrounded by bunkers. It's got this little mound in the middle. It's a really fun short hole that it throws in kind of right at the end of the round. You just play that long par 5, 14, and then right before you get into the gauntlet of those last 3 long par 4s, you play this little short par 3. And I believe one of the days they're going to play it less than 80 yards, maybe 75 yards, and they'll put it on this front little strip that it might be, I don't know, 7 to 8 yards front to back of green, between bunkers, and it'll be so firm. It's going to be such a fun little shot to watch on that hole, because you requires such precision from a wedge to get close on that one.
And then you got the other par 3s. They're all over 200, but it's not like they're 201 or 202. According to this, there's a 284 par 3 and a 290 par 3. Those got to be downhill, right?
Yeah, these are beasts. Actually, the 7th hole, which I think is the 284 one, that one is not very downhill. It's flat. That one is a beast. Again, so it'll play so firm and fast. Guys won't be hitting it 284 in the air. I don't think you're going to see 3 woods there. When I played both of those holes, I hit 2 iron. So it's like kind of like a 260 you're kind of throwing into the front. 11, people are going to go crazy, because I think one day it'll probably have it over 300 yards. It's going to be 310 yards, and everyone's going to think, oh my God, like Zach Johnson won't be able to get there with a driver or anything, or Webb Simpson. None of these guys will be able to get there. But that one plays definitely downhill, downwind. Again, if it's 300 yards, you have to hit it like 250. So just still a crazy long par 3. And both of them require really good shots of 260 plus. And with how firm it is, there's definitely going to be a lot of around the green game that's going to be stressed. These bunkers are really tough. They're just all over the place. They're redone in the renovation. So around the green will definitely be stressed, even though you've got these big greens. They've got the runoff similar to like a Southern Hills, similar to that Memorial Park. And it'll be definitely challenging tee to green on those par 3s.
How bad do you think that they can get the rough from the USGA?
I don't think it's going to be that long. This rough is different than any rough I think they've had in the US Open for a long time, having a Bermuda rough. Usually you have that like fescue or the Kikuya at Torrey. So this is the Bermuda rough. I don't believe they'll have it crazy, but it really sits down. The first time I played it last November, I hit a little right on the first hole, and I just walked past my ball, never saw it. It can really sit down and make it so difficult to put any spin on the ball and get into these kind of firm greens. So, well, I don't think the rough will be as long, and I don't know exactly how they're going to play it until we show up and see some Kevin Na rough videos on the week of. But it will definitely add an element where hitting the fairway will be valuable, and these fairways are not super narrow. So you will be able to hit fairways if you are an effective driver. I mean, you don't have to be super, super accurate, but as long as you're not spraying it, you have a chance to hit a good amount of fairways, but the rough will still be challenging. They're definitely going to have it to a way where it'll be difficult to access with a firm and fast conditions from this rough, because it is that Bermuda rough where it really sits down and tough to elevate it.
Well, I'm just trying to just get a mental picture in my mind of the type of player that might excel in these types of conditions. And I know that you have some early favorites of the type of player that you want to go with, but ball sitting down, you might have to run it up a little bit, reliance on short game out of the sand. You can spray it a bit off the tee. Could Spieth win here?
For sure. I mean, definitely. I mean, if his approach game is on, he was #1 strokes gained off the tee in the PGA. So apparently he's now a good driver. And if he's going to add that to his resume, it's definitely going to be a tee to green challenge. That's no big surprise at a US Open, but definitely all facets of the game are going to be challenged here. Spieth, for sure. If he's in line and you can do some magic around the greens, one hole that's going to be super interesting, people are going to love, is the 6th hole, which is the short par 4, similar to 10 at Riviera. And if anyone doesn't know, George C. Thomas was the designer at Riviera and at LACC. So there are some similarities in terms of like hole types, in terms of what it looks like on the scorecard, but much different in terms of the grass types and everything. So it's got this short par four with this really narrow green, where it's going to be really difficult to have like a little 50-yard and in shot maybe, and hold on a really small thin green. And the same thing on the two long par fives, 8 and I think it's 14. There won't be too many people hitting those greens in two. 8's got a small green and 14 is just so long. And so there's OB right if you're trying to hit the green in two. So having that around the green to have a chance to make birdies is probably going to be a big advantage, which Spieth could definitely do.
It's funny at some of the majors so far this year, even going back to, I mean, the reliance on short game wasn't really an issue at St. Andrews because everyone just hit those greens because they were massive. Like, if they're going to be runoff areas, that's what got me thinking like Southern Hills a little bit. But the weird thing about Southern Hills was, and we just saw it again at the PGA Championship this year at Oak Hill, a lot of the guys that suck at chipping actually chipped well.
Yeah, there are places where you can putt off the green here from kind of the ways on some of the runoffs. It's not like a Memorial Park where it runs off and you have this huge slope you've got to putt up or something. So that is possible. Someone like a Hovland could definitely use that putter. But those runoffs aren't on every green. They're still rough, and there's still some really challenging bunkers. I think it'll definitely be difficult with how firm and fast these greens. Sometimes I play on this course where they are just glass. And it is just flying. That's why I've heard a comp with Augusta, and I think it makes a lot of sense here because it has those kind of similar runoffs where it's challenging. You can putt it in some spots, and it's just same thing, a big ballpark where you can really hit driver, and a lot of elevation changes that kind of bring that Augusta comp.
So it does have the elevation changes like a lot similar to, you said Augusta, but Riviera at the same time?
Riviera is a little bit more flat. You know, I played Riviera a few years ago, and it's similar but different. There's not LA. You got some of these big kind of sweeping hills. It's built in kind of like the middle of a canyon. You're going to hear the word barranca like 25,000 times during this week. They're just going to love repeating that on the telecast every time. Barranca.
What is a barranca?
Barranca is a fancy word for like a little like dried out like ditch.
Okay.
So it comes into play on like just a few holes really, but it's a really cool visual element. So it kind of goes up, it's on right of 17 and comes into play on a tee shot on 8 when it kind of bisects the fairway. So the difference is you got these you get a lot of side hill lies, a lot of uphill, downhill lies. I mean, the 13th hole is a really long par 4, and you kind of have to carry it 300 yards to get up on the top of the slope. And if you don't, depending on where they have the tees, the ball might just come rolling all the way back down. That's the one hole that really sticks out, is like you have to hit the ball long, and that's like a 300 minimum. And if you don't get to the top of that fairway hump, you're going to have 225. A blind shot to a tough green, that hole will just be insane for short hitters.
Can you see any short hitters competing? I mean, there's obviously going to be some because they're going to putt the lights out or chip in a whole bunch of times, but just on the surface, like I'm trying to think of the shorter hitters that would have the required game to be based on what you've described to do this. It's usually the guys that have played well at Augusta and Riviera over the years with, not bombing it off the tee, like Morikawa. I mean, it's in California, so you should probably like bet Morikawa anyway, but sort of like a Molinari type today, not so much Molinari today, but what he was even before he won the Open Championship and went on his run. Like, he was still really good off the tee, despite not being long, but he just clobbered his long irons.
Yeah, I think it's definitely possible. If you have a good long iron game, someone can compete here. I really go back to having kind of a minimum 300 yards off the tee to compete out here. Someone who's going to be really confident in their driver is going to succeed here. With the width on some of these holes, you're going to be able to, for the long hitters are going to be able to have not much stress on some of them. I used to have the driver yips, and I would get out here and feel great because I could just swing away at the driver, and there's not a lot of trouble. There's not hazards. There's not OB that comes into play. I mean, the only hazard is really the Barranca again coming up on 17, right of 17. So you have a lot of flexibility where it's not like you have to club down or anything. A guy who hits the ball short is going to just be stressed in every other part of the game, which can happen. But I think it's a guy that hits the ball at least 300 yards that is really going to be able to take advantage of this. If they have it as firm as fast as I think it's going to be so hard to hit these greens with a 4 or 5 iron and hold it.
Can you play out of the Barranca, or is it a penalty?
Yes, you can. It is dry. Sometimes you can get a good lie and it's like not a problem. You can just kind of punch out, no problem. And sometimes you're just totally screwed. So it's kind of a crapshoot, but it's definitely in the back of your mind where you don't want to be in it.
So you've gone through the course, you know the course. So where are you leaning early on? Well, we don't need to hold you at anything right now, but what players spring to mind for you?
Yeah, this is just an easy one. Scotty Scheffler just kind of jumps off the page to me on just kind of everything. And I'm not a huge Scotty guy. I haven't taken him a lot, but to have as good as he has been tee to green this whole year, like I don't see how he doesn't fit in. And he's kind of like an all-American guy. Like I think it would be a crime if he didn't win the US Open at least one time, just kind of like a Spieth kind of same kind of thing. So he's definitely my number one. My pick when I get away from a Scotty or Rom guy is Tony Finau. I think Tony, this is his time. He has broken my heart too many times, but this is finally the time. You know, he's been so great approach this year. He'll be able to hit driver everywhere. He'll just bomb it. He's got a great short game. Just one of those tee to green guys that'll just dominate, I think. I love him. A few other guys, Xander for sure. I think Cantley will be a real popular pick. And then kind of Cam Young was the one other guy I kind of had picked out. He's done well at Augusta. He'll be able to bomb it all over the place. Great iron player. As long as his short game is kind of just good enough, I think he'll be a little bit under the radar coming in. Will be a great pick to kind of top 5 or have a shot to win.
See, I saw when you made the notes, you had Hatton on there, and that I found that really intriguing as a name for this place.
Hatton's really interesting. I mean, I think it's been underrated how good Hatton has been this year. He's been a top 10 player this year, and he's just consistent results week after week. You know, one of my closest picks was Shinnecock and Memorial Park for comp courses. And I believe Hatton did really well at Shinnecock, or was that Fleetwood when I'm getting my confused on? But
it may have been both.
That wouldn't surprise me. It's just, he has the right mode of being, he gains tee to green all over the place. His irons are great. He's good enough with a driver. His short game is great. Yeah, he got 6th place at that US Open at Shinnecock. So I think he's perfect. I think he did well at Memorial Park one year too, if I remember correctly. Yeah, he got 7th at Memorial Park. I think he fits excellent. His long irons are great. He has a real chance to kind of pick off a major here, I think. Ty Hatton, great pick.
He would be sort of the antithesis of the all-American boy, Scotty Scheffler.
A little bit of a British invasion there. I definitely could see it happen. I mean, I love Fleetwood too. Similar kind of mold, just effective driver. I keep going back to effective driver. Guys who can hit the ball long enough and are going to be able to still hit a lot of fairways. These fairways won't be super narrow like a Winged Foot was, where everyone's just hitting in the rough. If you are on with your driver, you're going to be able to hit it. So those guys that are pretty good in accuracy compared to their distance, I think are really going to do well here.
All right. I do have to ask you about some of the just relative California guys who we kind of always gravitate towards, be it Riviera, Torrey Pines. And the 3 that just stick out in my mind, I'm sure there's more of them: Rahm, Morikawa, Homa. Like, is there a case against these guys, knowing that you know that they're going to be comfortable?
Rahm, I mean, you can never say anything bad about him. And same thing with Scheffler. He's just going to be, he could come out here and dominate here. Although he didn't do so well when he played in the Pac-12s. Everyone's going to talk about Max Homa's, but I think he had 61 or 62 when he set the course record here. And I remember the first time I heard that in like 2012 or whatever it is, just blew my mind, because I thought this was just, LACC was the hardest course in the world. And you have a college kid going out there and shooting 62 or whatever. So you'll hear that a lot with Max. It's definitely a different course from what he played. The conditions will be much tougher. It'll be much longer. They've added a lot new tees since Max Homa played. Max, I get it. I think he would be fine. Doesn't kind of stick the top of the list for me. Morikawa, kind of same thing. I don't know if he just kind of hits it long enough here, and the around the green game is going to be stressed. Obviously, as good an iron player is, that's going to work anywhere. But Morikawa, I don't see as being able to step up to like a Scotty, a Finau, or a Xander. I don't think this is the perfect fit for him.
All right. Thanks for doing this, Craig. Thanks for doing all the research.
Absolutely. I love this place. This is just one of the more special golf courses in the world. People are going to love how it looks, how it plays. It's going to be just such a fun US Open to people get exposed to this course after kind of being behind the gates for so long.
Well, do you want people to hit you up on Twitter, or do you want to keep that a secret?
I have a Twitter, but I'm not very active on it. So if people want to follow, you're not going to get any benefit out of it. So I can maintain pretty low key with my Twitter presence, not giving away too many secrets unless they have a US Open LACC.
Yeah, and unless it's one, you're gonna get your face out there on this one. This is gonna be probably this behind the Masters, the second most watched research show of the year, and I got to say it's probably far more important to watch this one for people than the course that literally everyone knows.
Yeah, it'll be fun. Everyone's going to have kind of different opinions on going into it since so little people have seen it. But it's my favorite walk in the world. The first hole, you just go down and you have Beverly Hilton in the background. It's just such a fun place. And I'm really excited for people to see it and kind of see how it plays out.
Is it true that the Playboy Mansion's on this course?
Yes, right on behind the 14th tee, the long par 5. So it's just on the other side of the wall. I get two great stories about that. One time, and I think in the 90s, there was a playmate bouncing on a trampoline, and it was just slowing down play all over the place. And I believe the club had to call up the Playboy Mansion and say, get the girl off the trampoline because it's affecting the pace of play on the course. And then another year, someone tried to snuck onto LACC to climb over the fence to get into a Playboy Mansion party, and the guy fell back and died. And like the groundskeepers at LACC found him like in the bushes the next morning because it's a big fence with big hedges, and he just falls back and dies. And it's a crazy place, and you're right on the other side of it. You can hear the peacocks and whatever kind of going on while you're playing. It's crazy.
See, it would have been a good time for one of these DFS companies to return to the Playboy Mansion, try to figure out some way to, have a World Golf Championship here this week.
That would be a great idea. I don't know why DraftKings didn't do it.
Well, I mean, they don't want to do anything. Let's be real. Okay, let's jump back over to fantasynational.com and try to build off of what Greg has told us about this course. And, I have the scorecard in front of me, but he said, some is wind affected, some is elevation affected. So, we're going to be in long proximity buckets. All the proximity buckets that Greg provided are already available in the Mayo Media newsletter. It will get sent to you as a part of an email if you're a subscriber, and you get into the draw, but you can go back and click on it like a website anyway. It is from the Wednesday post for the Canadian Open and the US Open First Look, where we have most of our bucket approaches that we expect. Obviously, it's going to be different for every single player. The longer players might have shorter approaches, and the shorter players might have even longer approaches, but it's going to be the average of what we're looking at going into everything. And once again, playing the DraftKings Listeners League, that link is down in the description right now. Before we do anything, let's just talk about some history. It's funny because it's all at different courses. However, the USGA setups over time, outside of Aaron Hills, really have been, hey, Sam Bennett. Let's take a look at Sam Bennett for a second. He's playing in Canada this week, but, dude gains a ton of strokes off the tee. He came 16th at the Masters. The putter has been a real issue for him, but if this is going to be a tournament where people do struggle on the greens a lot, maybe, I don't want to say it benefits crappy putters, but maybe that stat can be mitigated a little bit, that you can't get so off the rails. And as we've kind of talked about already, that off the tee is going to be so important that Sam Bennett, even though this will be his, third career professional start, that he is going to be someone that is probably going to be in the top 15 of the field in terms of strokes gained off the tee. So I wouldn't just immediately overlook him. Last year, he did come T49 in the U.S. Open. So just overall, past 5 years, give it a click. Xander hasn't missed a cut. He's come inside the top 10 4 times, inside the top 15 every time. And This is, he's a San Diego guy. Didn't work out for him at Torrey Pines, although he was very close. This is going to be another situation where Xander's going to be very popular, already down to 16-1. Louis, Dustin, Rory, and Rahm are next. I mean, I got to think that Rahm is the favorite coming into this. I know he's not playing his best golf at the moment, although he and Scheffler, that was the one thing that was sort of clouded at Memorial when Scotty kind of went a little bit off during the final round to miss the playoff by a stroke, and everything was made. He led the field again in strokes gained tee to green, and then lost, 7.9 on the green, something crazy like that, 8.5 on the green. So it's been just brutal for him, 2 starts in a row on the green, although he is on just such an insane heater tee to green right now that, once again, almost like Sam Bennett, that maybe if Scheffler can cut that down to like -2 strokes putting, that might be good enough at the U.S. Open if you're going to gain that many tee to green. But Rahm's Memorial kind of mirrored the same thing when we go take a look at it. Like, he gained 11.4 strokes tee to green, and none of that was around the green. Almost 10 strokes on approach. He dialed in that way. Very similar to what happened to him at the RBC Heritage earlier this year, but then he couldn't chip or putt. But -5.2 strokes putting. At least with Scheffler, when you look at it, like when he got on his hot run a year ago, and just started winning event after event after event. You can see it here starting in Phoenix. He went on a great putting run. It wasn't just all tee to green. His tee to green game at the moment is way better than it was during that historic stretch a year ago when he won the 4 times in 3 months, just to take a look at it. But you can see that he was gaining strokes putting. And then almost immediately after the Masters, his putter went into the tank. He only gained Charles Schwab. He barely gained. BMW, he barely gained. And those are the only 2 for the rest of the season until we got to, the Century Tournament of Champions to kick off the year. So it's not like this crappy putting is something new for Scotty Scheffler. It's just become even more pronounced. And it's not even really like the 45-footers that are killing him. It's the 3-footers. He's suffering from 2018 Jordan Spieth syndrome at the moment, where it's not the long ones, it's the short ones. He just stands over them, and you can just see it. There's no confidence in his stroke. Like, the turning point came at match play. He had a chance to bury Sam Burns, missed the short putt, and since then, dude can't make a 5-footer. It's kind of insane to think about. And then we see this year, it turned around for him a little bit on the greens. Phoenix, he wins again. Players, he barely gains. But then that immaculate streak, I guess it really started at the Arnold Palmer, where, gaining over 10 strokes tee to green in every event except the RBC Heritage. The Masters was no different. Obviously, we don't have the strokes game. We don't get that until 3 years later because the Masters. But in the real-time data that we were able to calculate, he was leading the field tee to green, and he dropped like 5 strokes on the greens. Turned it around a little bit the PGA, turned around a little bit the Byron Nelson. He was excellent at the PGA Championship. And he's coming top 5 in all of these tournaments, which is insane to think about, that if he can just have a decent week on the greens. Like, that's why these guys are, the overwhelming favorites coming in. It's nothing new to think about that way, but you can see Scheffler. He's played 3 in the past 4 years, T2, T7, and a missed cut for him. Other than that, Patrick Reed has done pretty well at these events. Patrick Cantlay hasn't missed a cut, but he hasn't finished better than T14. Adam Scott's made the cut each of the past 4 years at the U.S. Open. Harris English has made the cut every year with 2 top 4 finishes over that time. Rory's come inside the top 10 each of the past 4 years. DJ has been really good. Let's take a look back at last year, Brookline, when Fitzpatrick ended up winning, and just try to check out a little bit of form coming in to see how guys were doing in past U.S. Open, with experience. Like Denny McCarthy just had nothing coming in, ended up coming inside the top 7. You can see Keegan. We're in the Northeast. Whenever you have a chance to bet on Northeast Keegan, you probably do it. And you cash that top 8 each way at the very end. It was a very sweaty U.S. Open if you backed Keegan Bradley near the top or a top 10 bet. But he came through. Shout out to you, Keegan. The putter went drastically cold for him last year, just outside of Boston in the final round, because he was actually putting quite well. We've seen that at majors from him. Even at the PGA Championship this year, he was running a hot putter throughout the course of the first 2 rounds. They just kind of went cold on him during the weekend. Take a look back at 2021. Torrey Pines, another California course, but as we heard, not super correlated, in terms of length and proximity, but no Kikuyu grass on the course at LA Country Club like you see at Torrey Pines. You have Morikawa, Brooks. Brooks has been excellent in all of these. T4, second, first, 55th, coming off a major championship win. Besides Scheffler and Rahm, there has to be no player that you probably feel more confident in at the moment than Brooks Koepka entering this tournament, which is, what the odds are kind of reflecting. When we take a look at them, it's Scheffler, it's Rahm, it's Brooks. I mean, that logically makes a lot of sense. Rory, they're just not going to price down enough to hit the form that he's in at the moment. Maybe this is a statement week for Rory McIlroy. Obviously, when we talked about the way that the course is set up, it should favor what he does well. And Vic is an interesting one. He has the 2 top 15s. He missed the cut last year. And then at Torrey Pines, he hit the shot into the bunker and the sand got in his eye and he was forced to withdraw. Although I think he went to Germany the next week and won. So it turned out that he was all right. I think it was the BMW International was the one that he went played overseas. It wasn't the Porsche that just happened like 2 weeks ago that McKippen got himself into the field with. See, Cantley and Xander, I mean, this is kind of the spot where I would be looking at. In terms of players that have done well at California U.S. Opens in general. Max Homa is going to be one that we talk about. I already have the bet in on Max Homa. It's the only bet that I have in so far. Made it during Torrey Pines back in February. Caught him at 50-1. I know a lot of people are in on that number. Now, these are not POA greens. They're bent grass greens, and you can see that he putts very well on POA. But he's been bad off the tee recently. But when you take a look at the results, they're not horrible. They have been at majors. 43rd at the Masters, 55th at the PGA Championship. Nothing would really indicate from his major performances that he is capable of not only winning but contending, but he does hold the course record here, beating Patrick Cantley's former course record, although that was like 10 years ago. It's not the same course anymore. But if you can continue to ride this hot putter, we've seen the approach game pick up just a little bit at the Charles Schwab, albeit a much different course than the PGA Championship. We need him to get his driver back on the rails, and maybe that's something that he can do, as that was such a strong part of his game. We see over the last 5, he's only gained 0.3 of a stroke per tournament, where he was up over the past 20 on 0.8, 0.5 for his career. So he's below his baseline currently, and the approach is below his baseline over the last 22. So maybe he's in a cooling off period. Maybe he's in a refractory period. Who knows how it's working for Max Homa right now? But if that 2.8 strokes gained on approach at Charles Schwab can be an indicator for us they started to figure something out with his irons, I mean, you'd be crazy not to look at him based on how well that he has performed at California courses in his career. He's won twice in Napa. Obviously, he's won at Riviera, same course designer. He's won at Torrey Pines, 2 hours south of this course. So, and he holds the course record. So he's going to be popular, but I think that some people might look at the recent form, and that is going to be enough to get them off of him at the moment. Obviously, the full field, as I'm recording this, has not been released as of yet. So some guys will be missing, and when the DraftKings pricing is released, obviously then that will be updated a little bit more. So I do think it's time to build a model out and see what we can do based on the information that we have at hand. So maybe we can take a look at what we've done at U.S. Opens in past years and maybe just try to work off one of those. Let's see if we have U.S. Open. Where are we at? U.S. Open Pebble, U.S. Open Drivers. Or do we have Brookline in here? I mean, I recall making one for Brookline. Totally forget what I actually put it under, or even maybe forgot to name it, because that's something stupid that I would do. So U.S. Open. Let's just go to U.S. Open. I mean, that's at Pebble. That's probably not going to work out. Torrey Simple, Torrey Pines. Let's just take a look at what we did for Pebble Beach. So we had the shorter par 4s. Obviously, we're going to take that out, and we'll call this U.S. Open at L.A. Country Club. So approach and driving, let's just start from scratch and just go based off what Greg told us in the research that we've done already about the course in the bucket ranges and try to figure that out. We're not going to weight approach as much because we're going to want to go strokes gained off the tee and driving distance. Those have been 2 key correlation points amongst all U.S. Opens, even at Pebble Beach, which is kind of crazy to think about, that being such a short course as it relates to most of the other U.S. Opens. Obviously, the U.S. Open at Pebble Beach played a lot longer than it does, during the AT&T Pebble Beach Pro-Am. But we're going to go with that. Driving distance and strokes gained off the tee. We are going to throw in, let's see here, strokes gained approach, and we're going to hit up the key proximity buckets. Now, I think that we're going to look at this 2 different ways, because there's going to be proximity buckets from 75 to 150, or at least there should be, or 75 and in. So we're going to go 75 to 100, not only because there might be a lot of approaches from that range and some of the shorter holes or even the par fives, but as we've seen a lot of the time in US Opens, because the rough can get up so thick that a lot of the hackouts might end up in this range. Then you need to get it up and down from here for par in order to ensure you don't fall too far behind. It's going to be difficult with strokes gained around the green because, as we've seen at majors, some guys who are historically not good around the greens perform admirably at majors simply because the rough is so thick that the guys that, when you're dealing with shaved surfaces or you're dealing with lesser rough, that the better players from around the green are going to be able to control the ball much better. There's not a lot of control out of the green once the ball is completely buried. There's only so much you can do. You can only really stab at it. I mean, that's where kind of Scheffler and Spieth come in because they're really good at that kind of shot, but that's not necessarily translated into the numbers. So we'll figure out what to do with that in a second. After that, we're going to get 75 to 200. You're going to see a lot of the par 4 approaches from that range. So we're going to go that bucket for proximity, and then we're going to go 200 plus as well, and that should try to factor in some of the par 3s. When we take a look at the par 3s, you got 228, 284 as we talked about, 290 and 124, which could end up playing even shorter. But on the par 5s, you're going to have a lot of these approaches anyway. We are most definitely throwing in par 4s from 450 to 500 yards. We actually do have one, two, you know what? Let's throw that out. Let's throw that one out and go par 4s over 500 yards. That's just insane to think about. I just played Hazeltine this week, and because it was I was playing with Moose, and Moose is very good, much better than me. That I was forced to play from not the very back tees, but the ones from the back. I'm usually a white tee player based off my distance, and just it's so much different, especially because the rough there, like the general rough at Hazeltine, is like hack out rough. It's absolutely brutal. But when you don't have a ton of distance anyway, and now you're dealing with rough where the ball is just going to stick the moment that you're in it, all of a sudden, at your local course, when you're playing from the closer tees, you're going to have a lot in that, 125 to 175 bucket of shots. And then I go out and play there, and as soon as my ball gets clobbered in the rough and I'm not hitting fairways, basically all my approach shots are from like 200 to 225 yards. It's funny because that might be the case for a lot of the pros this week, even if they hit the fairway at LA Country Club. So that's just mind-boggling how good these guys are from those areas. So par 4s, 500 yards plus. I don't know how I want to approach the putting stats. Let's throw in bogey avoidance, just because that's fun, and you need that. Although I do like to say that bogey avoidance is not necessarily a predictive stat, although you can debate the merit of how predictive any of these stats are. But I've always found that bogey avoidance is a lot like WAR in baseball. It is more of a storytelling stat rather than a predictive stat, where it just kind of tells. Of course, the guys who did well avoided a lot of bogeys, but that doesn't necessarily translate from one tournament or one course to another. So keep that in mind going forward. Let's just throw in 10 to 15 feet putting just to make sure that we have putting represented in this. Actually, let's get rid of that and throw in strokes gained short game. I think that's probably the best way to do it, since I don't really know what to do with putting or what to do with chipping this week. Strokes gained short game on Fantasy National is a combination of strokes gained around the green and strokes gained putting. It's a summation of those two throwing in. So, we think that off the tee is going to be huge. Weight that at 20, and we're going to weight distance at 10. So 30% towards our driving stats. Obviously, approach is going to mean so much more. So we're going to go with 15 on approach. We're going to put this mini bucket of 75 to 100 at 10% and just weight all three proximity ranges at 10%. That's why we're only going 15% on approach, because those are approach numbers. Why? What do I have it? Oh, I have that at 11. So we have 25% allocation left, which means we're going to go 10% on the par 4 range, 5% on bogey avoidance, and then 10% on strokes gained short game. Any guesses for you out there right now on who ends up being number one over the past 24 rounds? Let's take a look and see it. Scheffler, probably, since we haven't weighted putting all that strongly. Maybe he's been so bad. I guess short game, he's actually going to be pretty good because his around the green numbers are excellent. So I assume it's Scotty. Yeah, Scotty. Scotty does know that he's number 1. Rom is number 2. Hovland, Cantlay, Brooks. All right, I think that makes a lot of logical sense when we take a look at this. Then we have Xander, Hovland, Morikawa, Homa. Interesting. Actually, no, that's not it. That's just the pricing. Scotty, Rom, Hovland, Cantlay, Brooks. Top 5. Wyndham Clark. I wonder with Wyndham Clark. I don't know why this is jumping on me. I guess we're getting stats in real time loaded in. And let's see. Wyndham Clark, good POA putter, although that's not really going to do anything for him. Had a bad PGA championship. Other than that, he's been rock solid. And you can see how good the putting is. How has he played in California the past few years? 37th at the Farmers, 33rd at the Genesis. Lost strokes on the green in both of those. Let's swing back. Missed the cut at Torrey Pines during the U.S. Open. 8th at the Genesis in 2021, 32nd at the Farmers. I mean, he has the distance. This we know. And the strokes gained off the tee numbers have not been good recently. They were really good at Wells Fargo, but we're gone from the heyday of him kind of, 4.6, 5.3. It's been kind of hit or miss. The Players, a shorter course, did incredibly well, but it's been the approach and putting. So maybe he gets docked a little bit based on that, because strokes gained off the tee only 70th in the field, still top 20 in driving distance over that time. Hideki rates out 7th, although the off the tee and driving distance has been lower, but he was dealing with that neck injury. I backed Hideki at Memorial. He was winning until he wasn't. The strokes gained off the tee was not great, but the approach has been good. The putting has been okay. Generally punts better on bent than, I guess he putts better on POA. He loses strokes everywhere. Let's be real about this. But on Bermuda, he just tends to be really bad. He can gain strokes, as we just saw, at the Memorial on bent grass. Gained at the Byron Nelson. He gained at the Masters, all bent grass. Not going to be the pure bent grass that we see. Obviously, there's probably still going to be POA trivials that are just baked in. They're going to try to get them out. Most of the best courses in the world still just have, depending on where you're at, if POA is natural to that area, then it's just a lot of the time going to seep its way in, even if they try to keep it down. Even the best groundskeeper are going to lose it a little bit somewhere on the course, but it's just mainly going to be bent. Just don't think of this as like Augusta bent grass. At the Valero, he's really good off the tee. PGA Championship, really good off the tee. So let's take a bit of a deeper look here and see where those numbers are coming from when we take a look at distance and accuracy. So since the start of the 2021-2022 season, 334 drives measured on launch data. So you can see how he's playing his ball, how his accuracy goes. When he's playing the ball with a bit of a curve, the accuracy is not super high up. The club head speed and the smash factor is actually quite good at 1.5. Let's see, the fairways. Okay, he's hitting a ton of fairways. This is good to know. So he's going to be one of the more accurate players in the field. And he did gain on distance at Memorial, a place where you can kind of go rip shit off the tee if you want to. I mean, if you miss, you're going to be screwed. But it's a place with very wide fairways. At thinner fairways, he had been losing distance to the field a lot. Did gain at the Arnold Palmer, but you can see his distance is just way down. Maybe now that he's recovered from the injury a little bit, he's starting to get it back distance-wise, but as long as he can keep this accuracy up, I think that's great news for the prospects of Hideki Matsuyama. Coming at 35-1 right now, I would expect him to be deeper than that by the time we go along, so I'm just going to start him for now. Obviously, Greg said he liked Finau. Let's take a look at Finau and what he has been up to. He won in Mexico, and then he played the PGA Championship, did not do well, couldn't make a putt to save his life. The putter has gone frigid since the win, which is not great, although Memorial Park was a place where Greg had pointed out that he thinks that there's a bit of a crossover. He gained a ton of strokes putting there. The ball striking was immaculate, albeit against a far weaker field than we've been noticing. When you see his wins outside of the Northern Trust, the first leg of the FedEx Cup, Minnesota, Detroit, Houston, Mexico, Puerto Rico, these have been the wins for Tony Finau in his career. So it's not like he hasn't performed well at major championships in his career, but when he wins, he tends to win against a weaker subset field, and he has not performed all that well. I mean, let's see, at the past majors, T72, T26 at the Masters. He was 19th at the Players. That's not so bad. Actually gained strokes putting there. Missed the cut at last year's U.S. Open. Top T28 at the Open Championship, T30 at the PGA Championship, T35 at the Masters. It used to be a much better run for him in a lot of these. Like he's 15th at the Open, 8th at the PGA Championship, 10th at the Masters. We're gone from those days right now, but I think his game does suit this place pretty well. And the numbers would point out that he is actually playing really well at the moment. Hatton, Rory, Woodland. Oh, God. He does have a U.S. Open win in California. Fleetwood, we'll see how he finishes up in Canada. Neiman has the win at Riviera in his career. I forget how he did. I feel like he was lurking for a moment at both the Masters and PGA and just kind of tailed off a little bit. We'll see how he ended up finishing. He missed the cut at the PGA Championship, so it wasn't there. He's 16th at the Masters. That's what I was thinking about. How has he done at U.S. Opens in his career? Has made each of the past 3 cuts. Neiman has the type of game that you want for this place. He's very good with his wedges. He can play the ball a bit lower if you need that, if it gets a little bit windy out. And we just know that his ball flight is lower than most players anyway, that maybe he can get some substantial rollout on firm and fast greens. That would make a lot of logical sense. U.S. Opens for Gary Woodland. He has a win and a 10th. He was 10th last year at Brookline, 50th at Torrey Pines, missed the cut in 2020. Playing some good golf overall. This is what we need to avoid when it comes to Gary. We've seen it a few times so far this year. Minus 5.6 on the greens. That was only in 3 weighted rounds, too. Jesus, Gary, get it together. Yeah, in Phoenix, 5.2 lost, 7.4 lost in Mexico, 3.5 lost. It's always the worry. But once again, if these greens are playing super fast and super tough, maybe it can be a little bit better for the worst putters in the field. Lowry, Connors, Fowler, Cam Davis, Mito, Pereira. Maybe it was Mito that I was thinking of. Getting my Chileans all mixed up. Yeah, he was 18th at the PGA Championship. So I just kind of combined them into one player. This is pretty good. Almost 5 off the tee, almost 5 on approach, gained around the greens, couldn't make a putt. Still good for 18th. No idea how he's been playing on the LIV Tour as of late. Missed the cut at last year's U.S. and Open Championship. Was 3rd at the PGA Championship, obviously. So he's had a mixed history at major championships. Although when he makes the cut, he tends to come inside the top 20. So that will be good because he's priced down at 80-1 right now. Spieth is up there. Hayden Buckley and Eckroat. I'm curious to see how Eckroat translates this week into the U.S. Open. And putts really well on bent grass and is just playing great golf at the moment. To hit the struggle bus in the final round of Memorial, but he was inside the top 5 going into the final round. Top 20 at Charles Schwab. 2nd at the Byron Nelson. Now, he's done the majority of his best work against weaker fields, but he's a very young player, a very highly regarded prospect coming in. So I think it's definitely worth a look for him, depending on what the DraftKings pricing comes in. I'm not going to bet him at 300-1, but if he's like 6,400 on DraftKings, now I think that we can have a conversation about this. Siwoo lacks the driving distance, but gains a ton off the tee and gains a ton on approach, and we just know he's either going to be great or really bad. These are the 2 Siwoo outcomes. I'm curious to know how he's actually performed in U.S. Opens over the years. I feel like this has been his worst major. Yeah, I would be correct in saying that. Miscut 40th, miscut 13th. All right, so let's probably not go to Siwoo this week. Although when he comes in 3rd place, you're going to be like, oh yeah, Siwoo. It's just been one of those weeks. Taylor Moore continues to kind of pop up in the stat trends. Short game has been good. Bogey avoidance has been good. Those 2 stats can go hand to hand. Let's see. 24th in driving distance. All right, let's see, Taylor Moore. What you been up to? Missed cut at the Charles Schwab, 72nd at the PGA Championship. Made the weekend. I was feeling good about him in some DraftKings lineups, and then it did not go well after that. Then he's taken some time off since Colonial, so this is the first time we'll see him in 3 weeks. Might be hard to back here, although if he can get his driver back going, and we need, not necessarily Valspar Taylor Moore, but what he was doing earlier in the year at Pebble and Farmers, where he's gaining a bit everywhere, and even in Phoenix, where he's gaining a bunch in ball striking and making a few putts, then he can be not a serious contender, but someone who's actually pretty good. Rogers, I feel like I've usually bet him first round leader at U.S. Opens, and obviously a good California track record. Has played in 4 U.S. Opens, has never missed a cut, but has never finished inside the top 30 at the same time. Again, coming off a pretty good week at Memorial. He was T30 a lot like Eckroat, went into the final round doing very well, and then everything kind of went off the rails for him. It's been a very good year for him. We know that he does gain off the tee more often than not, and usually when he does gain, he substantially gains versus the field. And that's not even at crap events, like at the PGA Championship when he was 29th, gained 4.3 against the field. Valero, a big driving course, 5.2, although not a great strength of field, an elevated event in Phoenix, 3.4. So if he can get that driver rolling, then it could be a very good week for a potentially cheap Patrick Rogers. Who are some of the other lower names? We'll see what happens with Sergio. He qualified. Now, I would like to see Sergio do well here. 130 to 1. I think that his game is rounding into form. It seems like he wants to be a captain's pick on the Ryder Cup. I don't know how that is exactly going to work with the new potential merger on the go. But, Min Woo played really well. Oh, man, am I going to get sucked into Min Woo again? Let's see. The off the tee continues to be great. He's one of the best drivers of the ball in the world, was T27 at last year's U.S. Open. I think the U.S. Open is just a good venue for him, and it kind of makes up for his lack of approach game because he is so good around the green and can be a really hot putter from time to time, but he needs to be keyed in. Of course, I'm going to throw Min Woo on the short list. At 150 to 1, a guy that's won big boy tournaments in the past overseas. I like him more than someone like Bezadenhout, who's just one of the shortest drivers on tour. Sorry, Christian, you're not going to get to your optimal wedge range. He is a great scrambler. He is a great putter. So he could have one of those Patrick Reed type weeks where he gets it together and just makes a ton of putts and is one of the only people who's able to figure out the around the green play. But I would much rather go with Min Woo, who I know is almost top 10 in the field in driving distance. Can gain over 5 strokes with his driver and can fill it up with putts if it's one of his weeks. And he's not a disastrous putter. He can be a disastrous chipper and a disastrous iron player. This we know, but I would actually trust him more out of the rough and shit lies than at the Masters when everything is just so pristine. He's just not good off those surfaces. Jordan Smith is another one that I would kind of give a look to. Made the cut on the number with a putt on 18 at the PGA Championship. Blew his chance to win in Germany 2 weeks ago. Airmailed the par 5, hit it OB, and that was the end of the Jordan Smith story. But I think he's a good player. Just straight up, and we just don't see a lot of him on the PGA Tour or in America. He's just primarily a DP World Tour player, but a very good player at that. 2 other guys I would take a look at is Justin Suh and JJ Spawn. Spawn, he's a San Diego State Aztec, has played some good golf in California in the past. And we see with Justin Suh, another guy, the putter has been so good for him. Once this season has he lost strokes putting. That was at the Honda. It's funny because that's the week he actually came 5th. His best finish of the year was 6th at the Players' Championship. It's going to be tough for him off the tee as we kind of take a look at what he does. Driving distance, 82nd in this field, 69th in strokes gained. That's JJ Spawn, 76th off the tee for Justin Suh and 75th. But these are the types of players that can they can be carried by, they can be carried by their putter if you're Justin Suh. Let's be real here. 4.9, 3.3, 3.4, 1.5, 5.5. You're always going to see this type of player. It was Denny McCarthy last year who popped up at the U.S. Open. So it could be Suh this time around. And we saw his shot-making ability at the PGA Championship. He hasn't shown the ability to hold it together on a Sunday. But at the PGA Championship, he played great. And then Sunday came around and he did not play so well. Ditto at Memorial. He was playing great. And then Sunday came around and things skidded for him. And that's why these guys aren't the top players in the world. But it was like MJ Duffy. MJ Duffy's always won. I don't know whether he qualified or not. Let's see. Duffy. Nah, MJ Duffy's not. Maybe he is in the field, but he's not as a part of the betting market as of yet. That will re-up itself. But if he is in the field, he's someone who tends to play harder course as well. So that's always something to look at when we go into these things. I want to expand the time frame a little bit. We're going to go to past 50 rounds. And try to take a look at driving distance to give us, just maybe there's a little bit of noise in the smaller sample of driving distance off the tee, and especially the par 4 range, just because there's not that many par 4s that measure over 500 yards. Let's see, par 4s, 500 yards past 50. Fleetwood, Buckley, oh my guy, Thirsty Lawrence. Well, that's only in 16 rounds overall. Keith Mitchell, Sergio, Keegan, Mito. So there's another Mito mention. Finau. Okay, so he's back up there again, the long-term numbers. Hatton Gooch, Cantlay, Denny McCarthy, Patrick Rogers, Corey Connors, Victor Hovland, Sam Burns, Adam Scott. Hideki's up there as well. Seamus Power. I feel like I backed Seamus Power somewhere recently. Oh my God, Leishman's in the field. Good Lord. Where are we we at here? Seamus Power. Brother Seamus, what are you up to? It was Memorial. It was at the PGA Championship. I backed him, and then he went off the rails. He was good at Wells Fargo and the Byron Nelson, though. I don't know really what's happened to his game. Got his tour card for a while. Yeah, it's probably good enough for him for the moment. Once he gets back on, maybe we'll see from him. But he's played this length of hole really well. Si Woo has. Munoz, Wyndham Clark, Shane Lowry are also up there inside the top 50. We'll go to driving distance and try to correlate that with strokes gained off the tee. Like you see with Min Woo, 4th in driving distance now over that time, 54th in strokes gained off the tee. I wonder what's wrong with Cam Young. I don't know what it is. I guess it's horrendous putting. We'll see what his numbers end up being in Canada, but he did not have a great day one. As far as that I know. What he does on day 2, this I do not know because I am not from the future. If I was from the future, I would win far more bets than I do. But the strokes gained off the tee is still good. The approach has been kind of wonky for him, but it might be a nice buy low opportunity on Cameron Young. I do have a feeling, especially if he misses the cut in Canada, and we see why he misses the cut, that this 35-1 number goes like 55-60-1 almost overnight. If he has no form coming in, people are just simply not going to back him. So keep that in mind with some of these players and try to pivot a little bit in your DraftKings lineup because the numbers long-term do rate out really well. Even the proximity buckets for Cameron Young rate out really well. Dude can't putt. This we know. And that's going to be a common theme with a lot of the guys that we back. Oh, Wilco is here. I think he hit like a 500-yard drive in some tournament recently. Guy just bombs it off the tee. Ryan Fox is another one. Very good with his short wedges, and we've seen him do pretty well in major championships so far. Very consistent player. He made the cut on the number at Memorial and continued to go up the leaderboard over the weekend. PGA Championship top 25, Masters a top 30. Missed the cut at the Open last year and the U.S. Open and the U.S. Open the year before that, but seems to come in with a little bit better form. He's been doing it against very good fields too. He was top 30 at the Players. He was top 15 at the Arnold Palmer Invitational. He has been putting really well. This is true, but the iron play has been good. The chipping is either really good or really bad, and we did see with the distance, overall, the distance is always going to be there. The accuracy can get him into trouble, but if this is a potential bomb and gouge type track or just hit it as far as you can and hope to get lucky, Ryan Fox should very firmly be on the short list. Him and Min Woo. I got to take the guys from Oceania and see if they can perform well in LA outside of the regulars that we're looking at right now. Who pops up here that we're not? Brent Grant is someone who drives the ball quite a ways. Kokrak is going to be back for the first time in a while. I have no idea how he's running at the moment. There's Neiman. He's still inside the top 30. Nick Hardy is inside the top 35. Mito again continues to be up there. So Neiman and Mito going on the short list for sure. Crazy that Matthew Fitzpatrick, so much was made about his distance gain at the U.S. Open a year ago, but still sitting over the past 50 rounds inside the top 30 of all players. Spieth is another one. 37th. It's a good number for Jordan Spieth in terms of driving distance because that's just not what you would put him at. This could be a Spieth major. Be very interesting to see how he ends up performing here. What has he done? He chipped in a bunch at Memorial in the final round. Came 5th at Memorial. Maybe that's the shot that he needed to get back into things. Like the around the green was piss poor. 2 missed cuts and a T20 or T29 at the PGA Championship. It's not like Jordan Spieth to have 3 consecutive. I wonder the last time before Colonial, PGA Championship, and Wells Fargo they actually lost strokes around the green 3 consecutive events. Doesn't seem like it's ever happened. Oh, right here. 2020, Mexico, Charles Schwab. Oh, Mexico. And then coming out of COVID, Charles Schwab, Heritage, and Travelers lost when he was trying to get his game back in order. Previous to that in his career, it doesn't seem like it had ever happened. And we're going back now, we're into 2013, and it had never happened. So now that he's off the hump a little bit here, could be nice to see someone like Jordan Spieth kind of round his game into form. His odds are 25-1 right now. I don't think he's going to be a popular pick. So that's interesting. Bogey avoidance over the past 50 rounds. Scheffler, Day, Xander. mean, all signs point to Xander, which is just always terrifying because you back him. He'll either be doing great day one and then have that one round. You're like, what the hell are you doing? He'll shoot like a 77, Saturday afternoon while he's in contention. Or he has the really bad opening 9. And you're like, what the hell is going on? Then you're afraid he's going to miss the cut. But then he doesn't miss the cut and ends up rallying, getting in on the number and coming like T19, which would be great and everything, but if you're betting him to win, that's not exactly what you like to see. Brian Harmon has been good at bogey avoidance, so is Cooch and Tommy Fleetwood and Ricky Fowler. Rose, Bobby Mack is up there as well. I have no idea how McIntyre has been playing. I know that he had an injury previous to the Italian Open. He was T14 at the Porsche European. Yeah, he withdrew from the Italian Open, missed the cut at the PGA Championship, but did rebound nicely with the T14. Previous to that on the DP World Tour, 7th, the 6th, and the 7th, against weaker fields. He's playing the Magic Kenya, he's playing down in Australia and then in Korea. So he's been really traveling around the world, but T14 does have he's one of the few players with experience at this course in competitive play. I don't like the 150-1 at all. I do worry about Cameron Smith and his ability to drive the ball, but that was my issue. I mean, I backed him anyway at the PGA Championship, and he did not drive the ball well. Did everything else well. If you can just find a week where he can do okay off the tee. 4th at the U.S. Open, that was at Chambers Bay. But yeah, has not been a great run at the U.S. Open for him. Obviously, he can always putt his way to success, but you kind of want to lean more towards the bombers over that time. Let's see some guys that maybe don't gain a ton off the tee. I mean, gain enough off the tee, but still gain with a lot of accuracy. Hayden Buckley and Patrick Cantlay are the first two, but still 21st and 41st, both in driving distance. Hovland, Sergio, and Neiman, all top 10 strokes gained off the tee. Sung Jae is the one who doesn't gain. He's lower than average with distance, but top 15 in the field in strokes gained off the tee. Doesn't put himself in a lot of precarious positions. Jason Day is another one who's driving distance. This is 42nd. That's great, but 12th off the tee. Mito, 34th and 16th off the tee. Siwoo is 22nd off the tee, 103rd in driving distance. Jordan Smith, 61st in driving distance, 25th off the tee. Harmon is top 30 off the tee, 93rd. Morikawa is another one, 30th off the tee, and 94th in terms of distance. Answer and Oosthuizen are the other two that rank outside the top 95 in distance. Yet, where's Colin Morikawa? There we go. Yet rank inside the top 35 in terms of strokes gained off the tee. The driver's been bad. And obviously we don't have all the numbers because he withdrew from the Memorial, but he had been driving the ball like okay-ish that week. The putter has been a problem. The last time he gained, I guess he gained at the PGA Championship, but more than 2 strokes putting was actually at the Genesis. So in California courses, albeit on POA, although there is bent at the Farmers, but that is in the non-shot link round that we see. Gained at the Farmers, gained at the Genesis. So that's at least encouraging news that when he is in his home state, that he can gain on the greens and just bleed strokes everywhere else. But the approach continues to be great. Like, that's never going to be a problem for Morikawa, that the approaches are going to be good. The chipping has been better. The driving hasn't been great, to be perfectly honest with you. If he's hitting fairways, he's still going to have these really long approaches, although I believe at U.S. Opens he's done pretty well, even at Pebble. This was Pebble Beach as an amateur, or it was his first or second start as a pro, almost like Sam Bennett coming in this year. 35th. It's pretty good. Missed the cut at the 2020 U.S. Open. 4th at Torrey Pines. 5th last year at Brookline. Has just been a good performer at major championships over the course of his career. I wonder if Aberg is in. I don't think he did get in, but I would back that guy. In his first round, no, he's not in. In his first round at the Canadian Open this time, that I think he averaged 227 off the tee and hit 80% of his fairways. If that's something he can do, he's going to be a real problem. I can see why he was the number one ranked amateur in the world. Last thing I want to look at is just going to be strokes gained overall and just difficult courses. And we'll look past 24 rounds and we'll take the average of strokes gained total just to see. Scoring is going to be difficult relative to par. This we know. And it's going to be a longer course. It's a par 70, so we don't get a lot of those, but it is over 7,400 yards anyway. So we don't even need to look at par 72 or par 70. Just we'll put in those two filters that over 7,400 yards, difficult courses, past 24 rounds. And we're going to take a look at the average. Who gains the most strokes? Brooks, big shocker. Brooks, Rory, Dustin, Scotty, Xander, Victor, Colin, Hideki, Thigala. Okay. Matt Kuchar. Okay. 150 to 1, Matt Kuchar. Here we go. Rahm, Spieth, Reed, Bobby Mack, Thirsty Lawrence in one round. Matt Fitzpatrick, Thomas, Tom Kim, Justin Rose, Jordan Smith. Again, a lot of Jordan Smith on this list, albeit in a very small sample. We'll see how Jordan Smith is done on Euro. Just to give some context to how good or poorly he is playing at the moment. I guess he doesn't go by Jordan L. Smith on this website. So let's put in regular Jordan Smith and see what happens. Jordan Smith, the British boy. He is currently number 95 in the world rankings. Never been better than 69th. Had the 6th at the... Oh, no, he missed the cut at the PGA. Oh, yeah, he missed that putt. That's right, no, because the cut moved back up. I thought that it was going to fall to like +6 or +5, but it didn't end up moving there. But he did make a big up and down on 18 to try to get himself to the number. So missed at the Dutch Open, missed at the PGA Championship. Previous to that, 16th at the Italian Open, 6th the Ipis Honda, Singapore, won the Portugal Masters. Okay, so nothing crazy for him, but the 6th in Germany is actually kind of helping out a little bit. We'll go to Jordan Smith again, just to see how he's done at some of these major championships. 9th at the PGA Championship was his best result. Missed the cut at the U.S. Open a year ago. That was the only, or 2 years ago, sorry, at Torrey Pines. That was the only U.S. Open he's been playing with. So maybe his numbers are a bit fool's gold. Maybe I'll consider him for the moment. But has played this sort of tournament pretty well, albeit, again, only in 6 rounds. Keegan, Connors, and Louis and Woodland are all up there. Brent Grant actually does get a boost. I feel like I bet that I play this guy on DraftKings every week. He just absolutely sucks. Fleetwood, Jason Day, come on. Sergio continues to be up there. Gucci Man, Chuck Hoffman, Sam Burns, Eckroat, only in 6 rounds, mind you. English plays these ones really well. KH Lee, positive gains. Phil, Taylor Montgomery, that's only in 5 rounds for Taylor Montgomery, but I think one of those is Farmers and one of those is the U.S. Open. Let's see. U.S.Open, best finishes of 57th, and those were both as Korn Ferry players, remember, going through. So I think that's good enough for the first look for this year's U.S. Open for 2023 at LA Country Club. I'm still going to have to decide on how I go through. Ben, Kenny, and I will discuss the DraftKings pricing when it comes out over the weekend. Then me, Jeff, and Tim will break it all down from the betting side on Monday. Me, Cam, and Rob for the best bets on Tuesday. And then we're going to close things off with the giveaway winners, final DraftKings picks, final bets, the weather, and DraftKings ownership, and one and done with Tyler Tambolini on Wednesday. Again, with those giveaway winners, rate and review, sub to the channel, smash the like, all get you in the draw, as will any retweet or share on Facebook or re-TikTok. I mean, there's not a lot going on TikTok. Mayo Media has a TikTok, but it's not for picks. It's more for like best of content if you're ever looking for that stuff over at Mayo Media Net on TikTok. But get yourself in the giveaway draw for $500 and fantasynational.com/Mayo for that 20% off and to be eligible for the free annual membership giveaway. Listeners League, now open down in the description. I want to thank you all for watching. I want to thank Greg for lending his time and his insight into the course. Hope it helps. Hope you're ready to start making some decisions. I'm Pat Mayo. I'll see you next time.
Pat Mayo Experience! Experience!